Devin Carter and Jaden O'Neal just performed at Rivals 5-Star, and it's time to talk about it on Locked On Seminoles.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets with a $5 bet winner. We're going to be talking about two players in particular today about Florida State's recruiting class for class of 2026. Devin Carter, the recent flip from the Auburn Tigers to wide receiver, and the legacy recruit because Dexter Carter, that would be his father. And we're also going to talk about quarterback flip Jaden O'Neal. The quarterback that came over from Oklahoma Sooners is going to be the other discussion point as a main topic. But we're also going to talk about some of the other kids in the class. Jacoby Green just flipped from Mississippi State. Florida State overall as a class, why did it just suddenly explode? I want to talk a little bit about recruiting in this new age. Some information that I gleaned from a bunch of kids today at Rivals 5-Star. There were roughly 100 players here at Indianapolis where the event took place at the Indianapolis Colts facility. And finally, just kind of like what's going on with recruiting in general with the house settlement, some things to look for. So let's jump in with the first point, and that is that I was very happy to say that both Jaden and Devin are just good kids. These are the kind of guys you want to be around. They are the kind of people that you want to represent your program at Florida State University. Second of all, I just didn't really know what to expect with so much talent. You never know how kids are going to perform. And both of them had their moments. I mean, nobody was perfect today by any means. But considering the passing game, it takes forever to learn, both as a receiver and as a quarterback. They both did pretty well. And I also think that both of them have a lot of upside. Neither one of them is anywhere near being a complete product. But again, passing game, these kind of settings, while we try to see 7-on-7 and drills and all these different passing drills, there's only so much you can glean from it. So I'm more about the size. Is it legit? I'd seen Jaden before, 6'3", 215. He weighed in this morning. He said like yesterday or this morning, like 214. So he's consistent. Devin Carter, I didn't really think anything different about him in terms of what I thought he was going to be size-wise and standing in front of him, 180 pounds or so, and he can flat out run. Like he fits the bill of a wide receiver that can play flanker or play in the slot and just be a burner. Some of the short passes he caught at 7-on or in any other event, you could tell why he was so coveted as a recruit. And Auburn had him for a while, but Florida State flips him. So I was happy with that. But now let's get into a little more of the detail. I'll start with the quarterback because everybody likes to talk QB. As it relates to Jaden as an overall passer, he's still not perfect by any means. Again, it's a camp setting, so there's a little bit of uncomfortable nature. It was the indoor facility for the Colts in Indianapolis. It was hot as all get out. They don't have air conditioning there, which is really surprising. And some of the kids got better as the day, some got worse. I thought Jaden actually did a little better as the day went on when I saw him. Now, I was moving around quite a bit, but when I saw Jaden throw, he had a couple of money balls towards the end zone. He had a couple of nice checkdowns where he didn't have anything else. And by the way, that's arguably the most important pass in football is the check down. Because if you don't, you're throwing it where you don't need to be throwing it, the ball goes the other direction. He seemed to be more patient than some of the other quarterbacks, but everybody had bad throws, whether it was an interception or they overthrew somebody or in the accuracy challenge, etc., Jaden included. But overall, arm strength is there, size is there, demeanor is there. It's the kind of kid you want to be around. It's all the things that I thought I would see. In a way, it was like I didn't even need to see him today to know what I was going to get. That's a good thing. I had a higher opinion of him than some other people anyway, but his stats, aside from high school and all that stuff, I don't put a ton of stock in that. And by the way, don't ever believe the stats on Max Preps. All of those things don't get updated properly, as I was talking to his dad about that today. But this is the kind of guy that you can push the ball down the field in a Gus Malzahn offense, which is paramount. Gus wants to throw vertical. Jaden's arm will not be a problem. The only question is, does he assimilate to the offense? Does he learn the style and all the things they want to do, all the little nuances? And that's the stuff you have to learn once you get to college. We can't grade that yet. And it is why the quarterback position, I don't even think there's something in second place, is impossible to grade. Everything that's really pivotal, you don't get to grade until after the fact. Kind of sucks, but it's true. So I like what he has so far. And now it's just up to Jaden to learn the offense and go play football. He's going to have to compete with a couple guys that are older than him, just like everybody else. But the tools are there. And the other thing that I found interesting from just watching him today, and this is the biggest takeaway that I come away with Under Armour camp, Rivals camp, or anything else, 7-on-7, OT7. Can the kids move laterally? And I don't care if it's a 350-pound kid like Gabe Asenda, an offensive tackle / interior lineman that's going to play at Tennessee, or somebody like Jaden O'Neal that's going to play quarterback at Florida State. He's a pretty nimble athlete. Is he a guy that is going to run for 750 yards at Florida State? No. But he's a guy that can turn his shoulder into you and run you over, and he can make enough moves to extend plays. That's what Gus always talked about when I covered UCF, so I'm good with that. Now let's talk a little bit about Carter. The frame is still slight. He is built like a Snoop Menace, for somebody that remembers him from back in the day, but that smaller, slender build that you think of in a Florida State or a Florida Miami receiver from 20, 30, 40 years ago, it's the same kind of deal. And if you make any false move with him, with your technique, he's going to run by you. He's very fast. He can catch. He can move without the football very well in space to get separation. And he's probably even better with separation after Devin has the football in his hands. Devin Carter has the ability to shake you. That is the ability that every receiver needs to have, but not all do. He can take a 4-yard slant, make 2 or 3 guys miss and score. That's the difference between winning and losing. And ironically, that's really what Florida State was in the 80s, the 90s, and early 2000s. They annoyed you to death with generic football in the passing game, slants, hitches, little crossers, and then the athleticism would dominate. It wasn't anything shocking with that. And every now and then they'd run a trick play or something to keep you off guard. But they just out-talented people, and they didn't try to hide what they were doing. You can do that with Devin Carter, and especially with Gus's offense, which is going to run downhill. The opportunities that he will get in play action, I think, are going to be very, very good. The other thing with him that I like is the ability just to kind of watch him compete. He took it serious. Like, they're at a 5-star camp. It's an invite only. It's the elite of the elite players in the country going to these. And he didn't take reps off. Like, he wanted to compete. I knew Jaden was that way because I'd been around him, but I hadn't been around Devin before. So it was new for me. That was a good sign. One of the biggest determining factors for kids going up or kids going down, I don't care if it's Rivals, On3, 24/7, ESPN, is attitude or a lack thereof, depending on the kid. Devin's got the right attitude. That's the good news here. Above all else, it's great that he's super fast. There's no doubt he can smoke people. But if you don't want to apply that, then it really doesn't matter. I was very happy to say that he's that guy. And I also think that he's not just that guy now, but like he's hungry for more. And once he gets a little bigger, a little stronger, I'm curious to see how Malzahn and Norvell will want to use him. Last point on him, and then we'll go to break, and then we'll talk about the other commitments. I asked him, okay, what was the reasoning for Florida State instead of Auburn and all that? He just told me point blank, like there was no hesitation in his answer. And he said it was Norvell and Malzahn and Torkel, the entire offensive staff. Like just the room in the building. He used the building comment a couple of times, like they really want it. Like they want to turn it around. And I didn't expect that. Like he named a bunch of different guys. I'm not going to try to name everybody individually, but it was just a really refreshing thought because I was like, after what we saw last year, that's certainly what Florida State needs. There doesn't need to be any discomfort beyond the following. We need to see improvement in all aspects of Florida State football. And the attitude is where it starts. So I was just talking about it with Devin. Now we need to see it from the staff, whether it's head coach, person in the back office, recruiting office, the whole 9 yards. All of it's there. And he didn't hesitate. Again, it was like 0.1 seconds, and Devin was firing out an answer. I was happy to see that. That's a really good sign for Florida State. And to that point, that's also why they flipped Jacoby Green, somebody I'm going to talk about here in a second. And they've got the ball rolling with Xavier Tiller, another kid that's a really good recruit. And they're looking good for some other players. I'm on the road right now, as you can see, for those of you that are on YouTube. If I sound a little different, it's because I don't have my microphone with me. I'm in Indianapolis at just a podunk hotel. But this is a really good feeling to go on the road and hear that kind of stuff. So I'll talk about a little bit more about FSU's class next here on Locked On Seminoles. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. If you're already following the action, why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get into the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the baseball season, we're in the middle of it. The NBA Finals are over with OKC beating the Pacers. So if you're looking at doing something like a parlay on a baseball game, the thing that I look at personally would be the matchups between the star pitchers, especially later in the game, like those guys that are the closers, against hitters that are really trending. Who's going to get more than one hit, maybe score more than one run, something like that. Those are kind of fun to look at. As for what your opportunities are, if you're new to FanDuel, the new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Florida State has added Jacoby Green, a commitment that plays at a local school right down the road from Tallahassee, Madison County, Gadsden County. All those programs around there always have opportunities. This young man, I believe he's at Gadsden, I believe, but you never know when you're going to get some of those kids. Some of those kids have left here lately. He got originally committed to Mississippi State. 6'3", about 330 pounds, interior offensive lineman, true power player. I really liked him at Under Armour Orlando. But now my question is Jacoby ready to take that next step in terms of total development? Like he is country boy strong. Like he puts his arms out and gets his hands on somebody, it's over. Like he has insane strength. Now it's the technical stuff. I'd seen him before, and I kind of marked it down like, okay, this is a kid to watch. We'll see if Florida State, Miami, some of these other schools are going to continue to go after him, even though he committed real early to the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Jacoby Green ends up flipping to Florida State. There's a pretty good article on Knowles 24/7 about him. Check that out if you have not. It's certainly worth your time. But he's talking about, grew up a Knoll fan, so now I get a chance to stay home and play for the local school I rooted for. So I think the motivation will be there. But here's my question moving forward, and this is pretty typical for offensive linemen. How much does he want it off the gridiron? I know he can grind. I've seen him do it. It's, tape doesn't lie. But are you ready to change your diet? Are you ready to change your workout habits and all that stuff? Florida State's O-line history in the last 5 to 10 years is pretty low bar. But they got to completely jump over that bar 2-3 times. They're getting the skill kids like Devin Carter. We're going to talk about Xavier Tiller here in a second. These kids can play for anybody in the country. Any of the teams that were in the Final Four last year, et cetera. These are kind of players that can play anywhere. Kind of kid you expect Bowden or Jimbo or somebody like that who were excellent recruiters to get. Now you got blocked for them. Every single kid they take along the offensive line, I'm going to scrutinize a little differently, just straight up. Florida State desperately needs some of their younger offensive linemen. Mario Nash Jr., a kid, is an example from the last class, to make a splash early. It's not fair, but life isn't fair. So is Jacoby, just like every other kid they signed, ready to take that next step off the gridiron? Eating habits, sleeping habits, training habits, changing your body, technique, doing what the coach says, 100% all of it. There's playing time available after this year. At least 4 of Florida State's offensive linemen that will start this year are going to be gone. Why not you? Why not you in the 2 deep as a freshman in 26? Why not? It's up to you. Country boy strong, massive, local kid, playing time's available. Florida State's depth chart is not where it needs to be. Go make something happen. That's bottom line. Until they get to that point where they've got all the kids they're bringing in on the offensive line like that, this program will not make the mark that it needs to. Jacoby Green can be that guy. Let's see if he does. Sticking with offensive line, it sounds like Aaron Thomas, the offensive tackle from Mountain Point High School in the Phoenix area, is going to make a decision real soon. There's all kinds of different opinions on where he's going. But as of right now, at least what I can glean, and I don't know him personally, I've communicated with some of his camp, but I think it's going to be A&M or Ohio State. That would be very bad for Florida State. Obviously, he's a legacy recruit. I've talked about him 50 times on this show. Love his film, love his upside, but that young man has to go where he wants to go. 6'6", 300 pounds, Greater Phoenix area. His dad was Eric Thomas, played an interior line for Bowden, was on the 99 team, started on that team, won the title. He knows what it looks like. Their family knows what it looks like. They've got a lot of FSU blood. running through that program or through that family. But again, if I'm right, I don't think they're going to get him. Reading the tea leaves, reading everything that I've heard, but this is football recruiting. It's a long battle. We'll see if that sticks, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But that one would sting. Finding offensive tackles has been Florida State's biggest Achilles heel by a million miles over the last 10 years. Losing a legacy would truly hurt, but you got to rebound no matter what. I don't know which kids they're still going to have a chance at. I don't know Mubinga, the offensive lineman from Buford. They're in the mix, but there's several other schools still involved there as well, and some other kids. But they got to get another tackle in this class, regardless of what happens. And if it's not Thomas, we're going to have to see where that goes. So that's something to monitor. As for Xavier Tiller, the tight end, I've talked about him a little bit. I want to go more in depth, especially now that I saw Jaden play again today. Just kind of put things in perspective. Unfortunately, I never saw Kevin Sperry, but seeing Jaden today, this is the kind of guy that likes to throw in the middle of the field a little bit more than some of the other guys that you normally see at the high school level. Now, he can throw the out pattern with zip. He's got an arm. Not debatable. But he's also a kid that likes to challenge the middle of the field. Tight ends typically can do that. And if you meet Xavier Tiller, like his hands are enormous. He's the kind of kid that looks like he's probably a year or two away from where he needs to be physically to be an inline blocker. Really, he's truly a flex tight end. And I don't know if he wants to play a lot attached to the line. It would certainly behoove him to learn it, to not only play more at FSU, but to give himself a chance to play in the National Football League. But athletically, he's like a spider. Like he's really long at the hip. He's kind of built like a basketball player. Thin and wiry kid, 215, 220, 6'5"-ish, and just very naturally gifted, moving laterally, changing his body in the air to make really contested catches. And he just doesn't look like a normal high school kid. He's the guy that stands out in a crowd of Power 4 recruits. Alabama wanted him. Auburn wanted him. He had offers from schools all over the SEC. And Florida State won out. So first off, congrats to Florida State for getting him. Now comes the hard part. This is second. How do you motivate him to get ready to come in? And again, kind of like what I talked about with Jacoby Green, taking that next step. He's got to gain weight. Like this is a kid that can come in and play from day one athletically. God gifted him different, way different. Can he take that next step and be a dominant player? He's at Langston Hughes, which is one of the best programs, not only in Georgia, but all in Dixie. They've won state championship in Georgia, et cetera, here recently. They've got kids coming out of there constantly. Can he take that next step and be dominant every single rep? That's the question. Because like Landon Thomas isn't going to be at Florida State long. It'll be there this year and probably next year, and it'll be adios. It'll be this thing called the National Football League for him. FSU needs their tight ends to take that next step. We'll see if there can be something like that for Xavier Tiller. He's a national top 20 tight end by any measurement. Athletically, he's top 5. But we need to see him gain weight. We need to see him be more consistent with blocking and just doing all the little things. Those are the differences between a kid that's like top 250 in the country and a top 50 guy. It's the middle maturity to take it on. But again, God just completely gifted him in a different way. Like the way he moves, think of a two guard that they throw alley-oops to on the back line of his own defense, and he's throwing it down, and Dick Vitale's going crazy. That's the kind of athlete that Xavier Tiller is. So it's on him and Florida State to figure it out. He has the gifts to play right away. We'll see. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Florida State's class and what's next and what's kind of going on in recruiting. And I got some information that's a little surprising, to be honest with you, about how the House settlement's impacting some schools and actually help Florida State. That's next here on Locked On Seminoles. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk Seminoles with me. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe, and if you would, wherever you listen to your podcast and download it, give us a 5-star review. I appreciate that. Now, as for what's going on with Florida State's class in general, this is all of a sudden a top 25 class, a top 20 class, a top 15 class. Maybe it ends up top 10. Like it has been a really different kind of recruiting class. I had no idea where Florida State was going. It was back and forth from day to day. The things that I would hear, it was maddening. But this trend here recently, obviously, is very, very good. You get your quarterback. You get your burner at receiver. You get the really rare flex tight end, Xavier Tiller. You get Jacoby Green. You're in on several other kids, and you've got other options. And we still have a long way to go until the first Wednesday in December. Why not Florida State? They've had a lot to sell for a long time, and they finally started to figure some of that out, and they're getting some of the kids. We'll see who they flip. There's still plenty of flip candidates out there, and it's interesting, but like not all news is good. Like I saw that Hayes Fawcett put out from On3 that Trent Henderson didn't include Florida State in his final three. I was like, really? He had an official visit signed up with the Noles for the Alabama game. So is he still going to take that visit? Is that really a solid top three? There's so much still that's uncertain about Florida State's class. I don't know how to grade it yet. We obviously have to get the offensive tackle. But here's the best news. And this is something I'll be blunt. I had no idea. I was speaking to Devin Carter about, again, why'd you commit? What's going on? How did you feel about it and all this? And he was geeked about Florida State in general. And I asked him, I said, well, what's going on with Auburn? Like they've just hit rock bottom here lately. I was just curious, just kind of mixing it up with him. And I said, what's the deal? Like they're falling apart here. And I said something with NIL, and he said Florida State's NIL is a lot better than Auburn's. And I live in Auburn. I know what's kind of going on there. But they haven't adjusted from what I've been told now by him and several other people as it relates to the House settlement. And what does that mean? This is complex. There is no shortcut here. There's the money that the House settlement's going to have, which is $20.5 million, up to $20.5 million. Florida State will cover that. For the entire athletic department, probably 80% of the goodies are going to go to the football team, maybe another 10% to basketball, then the rest, it is what it is, will go to the other sports. But he said that Auburn's just not competitive. I don't think their collective is adding on to that now. Like it's not where it was before all this stuff happened, and Auburn's been very slow to react. So they lost out. Like he said, their offer for Florida State was way better than Auburn's. In addition to how well Norvell and the rest, again, there was a bunch of people he mentioned, helped recruit him to Florida State. I'm like, well, that's a wrap. So I was surprised because the perception around Florida State with their NIL is that it's not very good. That was before. Now, remember, the House settlement goes into effect July 1, like officially, in the payments start and all that stuff. How does that really represent everybody? I have no idea. We're not even there yet. But obviously, Florida State has adjusted. Auburn has not. And if you're beating SEC schools, and Auburn does a good job of scouting, they really do. For recruits, that's a good sign for your program in general. And it's probably a sign that Florida State is up the ante. They know they have to get a better class every year now moving forward. They're locked in with Norvell, and I was actually talking to some people about this. There's a bunch of schools, fans think, we're just going to fire coaches every 2-3 years so we get the elite guy. I think those days are over. The contracts are just too big for the coaches. They're going to shift money to NIL. That's what a lot of people were talking about. I don't disagree. I think even at 6-6 this year, I know people don't want to hear this. I don't think Norvell would get fired. I've come to that conclusion. He's owed just too much money. So the kids are going to get the money is my guess. You can shoot the messenger if you want, but that's my opinion. And this stuff is why I think it's also true. They're dumping a lot of cash into these recruits. They're going to sink or swim with Norvell at least for a while. That's my opinion. And he's done a lot better job recruiting. I've had multiple kids in separate conversations. I'll talk about Jaden's recruitment with him in a second. Talk about Norvell's more involved. He's doing a better job, and he's just a nice guy to be around. Okay. That's good to hear because I didn't think that they'd done a good enough job prior. But face-to-face conversations are face-to-face conversations. The money's improved. Norvell's recruiting efforts improved. And I know that I've talked about this several times here on Locked On Seminoles. The coaches they brought in comparison to the coaches they took out, way up in terms of recruiting acumen. It's really not that competitive. So Florida State's in a better situation there too. My only other question with this is really important, is Florida State going to be able to get a few more of those elite kids? And we're not going to know that probably until the fall. Some of those kids are going to try to flip. Some of those kids, they're still working on them. They may get a few more in June and July. But the money to get over the top is starting to be presented. Now can you get the kids? That's still working. Relationships are number one. But Florida State's in that mix. I didn't think I was going to be having that conversation right now. I thought they would at best, finish with a top 15 class because I didn't think the NIL in combination with coming up, let's be honest, a 2-10 season, it's pretty hard to overcome, would be obtainable. The staff has done it, and tip of the cap. You got to give credit when credit is due. Now, again, though, to get into that top 10, to really push to where you need to be, and I'll get into some more of the kids probably early next week. There'll be some more commitments. We'll get more clarity. But to really get to that point, it's going to be relationship building just further. There is nothing left if the money is there. That's important. But it's, do you carry it out? Because it gets old. I've talked to college coaches about this many times over the years. Talking to kids from one end of the year all the way to the end, it drags out. But those elite kids, they can take it as long as they want because they're elite. Not every recruit is the same. Saban's talked about this. Kirby Smart's talked about it. Bowden's talked about it. It is what it is. So if they want to get into that top 10, it's the continuation of what they're doing now into the season and, of course, winning games. So I'm kind of curious now. It's my perception of Florida State recruiting has changed a little bit and for the better. But again, these are face-to-face conversations, and it's why I go to these camps. It's why I go to these combines. It's bottom line. So once again, thank you very much for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. I'll be in a few more spots this week. I'm going to go to the Future 50 event, top underclassmen of the country down in Bradenton, Florida at IMG Academy. Might go to OT7. Haven't completely figured out how I'm going to do that. If I get to go, it would only be for a day because, of course, the events overlap, unfortunately. But I've still got some more traveling, so may not be the greatest internet connection, and I won't have my mic with me the whole time, but we'll still make it work where we can. So thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. We'll see you again soon.